the rhythmic pulse of reggae music. But beneath this idyllic facade lies a history steeped in darkness. A history that whispers through the sugarcane fields. A history that haunts the grand plantation houses. This is not a story for the faint of heart. This is a story of brutality, of resilience, of spirits unable to find peace. Are you brave enough to listen? This is the haunting history of Jamaican plantations. The Caribbean wind carries more than the scent of salt and hibiscus. It carries whispers. Whispers of pain, whispers of defiance, whispers of a past that refuses to be forgotten. For centuries, the islands of the Caribbean were battlegrounds. European powers clashed, vying for control of these tropical jewels. But the true cost of this conquest was paid in blood and suffering. The indigenous populations, decimated by disease and warfare, were replaced by a new commodity: African slaves. Millions of souls, ripped from their homes, endured the horrors of the Middle Passage. They arrived on these shores, shackled and broken, to face a life of forced labor. This is their Across the Jamaican landscape, grand plantation houses stand as silent witnesses. These once thriving estates, built on the backs of slaves, now whisper tales of a brutal past. The sugarcane fields, once a symbol of wealth and prosperity, now rustle with the memories of those who toiled and died there. The shackles may be gone, but the scars of slavery run deep. They are etched into the very fabric of Caribbean society. They linger in the music, the food, the stories passed down through generations. This is a story of pain and resilience, a story of a people determined to rise above their history. This is a story that demands to be heard. The story of Jamaican plantations begins not on the shores of the island, but across the Atlantic. Christopher Columbus, on his second voyage in 1494, first claimed Jamaica for Spain. The island, inhabited by the indigenous Taino people, quickly became a pawn in the burgeoning European race for colonies and riches. The Spanish, however, were more interested in gold than sugar. It was the English, arriving in 1655, who saw the true potential of Jamaica's fertile soil. They seized the island, brutally displacing the remaining Spanish and decimating the Taino population who had survived the previous century of colonial rule. With the island under their control, the English set about transforming Jamaica into an agricultural powerhouse. Their crop of choice sugarcane, this seemingly innocuous plant, would become the engine of a brutal and exploitative system, fueled by the forced labor of millions. Sugar was the white gold of the Caribbean. It fueled European appetites, sweetened their tea, and lined the pockets of plantation owners. But this wealth came at a terrible human cost. The transatlantic slave trade, already a horrific enterprise, exploded with the demand for sugar. African men, women, and children were captured, shackled, and crammed onto ships bound for the Caribbean. The journey, known as the Middle Passage, was a nightmare of disease, starvation, and brutality. Those who survived arrived in Jamaica traumatized and dehumanized, treated as mere chattel to work the plantations. The life that awaited them was one of relentless toil. Under the scorching Caribbean sun, they labored in the cane fields, planting, harvesting, and processing the raw sugar. The work was backbreaking, dangerous, and often fatal. Jamaican plantations were more than just farms. They were self-contained worlds, built on a foundation of exploitation and control. At the center stood the Great House, the opulent residence of the plantation owner. Here, amidst luxury and refinement, the profits of slavery were enjoyed, far removed from the suffering that made them possible. Surrounding the Great House were the fields. a sea of sugarcane stretching as far as the eye could see. Here, under the watchful eyes of overseers, the enslaved population toiled from dawn till dusk. Their lives were governed by the rhythm of the harvest, their movements controlled, their very existence dictated by the demands of sugar production. Away from the main house, hidden from view, were the slave quarters. These cramped and rudimentary huts offered little protection from the elements or comfort after a day of grueling labor. It was here, in the shadows of the great house, that the enslaved population carved out a semblance of life, their spirits unbroken despite the horrors they endured. The rooster's crow was not a herald of a new day for the enslaved on a Jamaican plantation, but the start of another grueling ordeal. As the first light touched the cane fields, they were already on their feet, driven from their meager shelters by the crack of the overseer's whip. There was no time for rest, no solace in the coming dawn. The air, heavy with humidity and the smell of molasses from the nearby boiling house, pressed down on them as they worked. The sun, a relentless master, climbed higher in the sky, turning the fields into a furnace. They toiled on, their bodies slick with sweat, their movements mechanical, driven by fear and exhaustion. The overseers, often driven by greed and cruelty, rode among them, their whips a constant threat. Any sign of weakness, any slacking in their labor, was met with swift and brutal punishment. The cries of the punished served as a stark reminder to the others of the price of disobedience. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the plantation, their work was still not done. They returned to their quarters, their bodies broken, their spirits crushed, only to rise again the next day to repeat the same agonizing cycle. Instruments of pain. The cruelty of the plantation system was not confined to the back-breaking labor. It was a system designed to dehumanize and control, and it employed a chilling array of tools to achieve its aims. The shackles, used to restrain and transport the enslaved, were a constant reminder of their captivity. The whip, a cruel symbol of the overseer's power, could inflict unimaginable pain with a single lash. Branding irons, heated to a searing temperature, were used to mark the enslaved like cattle, their skin forever scarred with the symbol of their ownership. The thumbscrews, a medieval torture device, were employed to crush fingers and extract confessions, a testament to the depths of depravity to which some plantation owners would sink. For those who dared to rebel, or even to simply falter in their work, there were more sinister punishments. The punishment cell, a dank and airless hole, offered no escape from the stifling darkness. Solitary confinement, a psychological torment, aimed to break the spirit and instill obedience. The whipping post, a grim fixture on many plantations, stood as a constant reminder of the price of defiance. The screams of those being punished echoed across the fields, a chilling soundtrack to the daily life on a Jamaican plantation. The horrors of the plantations were not confined to physical suffering. The psychological trauma inflicted on the enslaved population ran deep, leaving scars that would last for generations. Families were torn apart, their members sold off to different plantations, their bonds severed by the cruel whims of the slave trade. Mothers gave birth in chains, their newborns immediately branded as property of the plantation. Children grew up witnessing the degradation and abuse of their parents, their own innocence stolen by the brutal reality of their existence. The very act of speaking their native languages was forbidden, their cultures and traditions systematically suppressed. They were forced to adopt the language and customs of their captors, their own identities stripped away in an attempt to erase their humanity. Yet even in the face of such unimaginable cruelty, the human spirit endured. In the quiet moments, stolen away from the watchful eyes of their oppressors, they found solace in their shared heritage. They whispered stories of their homeland, sang songs of freedom, and clung to the hope that one day their The narrative of Jamaican plantations is not just a story of suffering and despair. It is also a story of remarkable courage, resilience, and an unyielding thirst for freedom. From the moment they were captured and forced onto slave ships, the enslaved Africans resisted their captors. They rose up in rebellion, challenging the authority of the plantation owners and overseers. These uprisings, often brutally suppressed, were a testament to their indomitable spirit. They poisoned food, destroyed crops, and sabotaged equipment, striking blows against the system that sought to enslave them. They escaped into the dense jungles, forming maroon communities where they lived free from the tyranny of the plantations. These acts of resistance, both large and small, were a constant thorn in the side of the plantation owners. They were a powerful reminder that the human spirit cannot be truly broken, that the desire for freedom burns bright even. The heart of the Jamaican plantation system was a cold and calculating business. It was a business built on the trade of human beings, where men, women, and children were reduced to commodities, bought and sold like livestock. Slave auctions were a common sight, the air thick with the stench of fear and desperation. Families were torn apart, their bonds shattered by the callous hand of the auctioneer's gavel. Mothers were separated from their children, husbands from wives, their cries of anguish echoing through the auction yard, only to be met with the indifferent gaze of those who profited from their misery. Every aspect of their lives was meticulously documented, their value measured in pounds and pence. Birth records, death certificates, and even punishments were carefully noted, a chilling paper trail of the human cost of the sugar trade. The wealth generated by these plantations flowed back to Europe, fueling the Industrial Revolution and lining the pockets of the aristocracy. The grand estates of England, built on the backs of enslaved Africans, stood as a testament to the insatiable greed that drove the transatlantic slave trade. The cruelty of the plantation system extended beyond the physical abuse. It was a system designed to break the spirit, to crush any hope of resistance. Children, born into slavery, were robbed of their childhoods, forced to work alongside adults from a tender age. They witnessed horrors no child should ever see, their innocence stolen by the brutal realities of plantation life. The enslaved population, denied access to proper medical care, relied on their own knowledge and traditions to treat illnesses and injuries. Herbs, gathered from the surrounding forests, provided some relief from their suffering, but many succumbed to disease, malnutrition, and the cumulative effects of their harsh labor. Religion, often a source of strength and hope, was twisted by the slave owners to serve their own ends. They preached obedience and acceptance of their lot, using the promise of heavenly rewards to quell any thoughts of rebellion. The plantation system, built on a foundation of violence and oppression, created a cycle of cruelty that reverberated through generations. The trauma endured by the enslaved population left deep scars, not only on their bodies but also on their psyches, the legacy of which would continue to haunt their descendants for years to come. The true cruelty of the plantation system lay not just in its physical brutality, but in its insidious ability to crush the human spirit. The enslaved population was subjected to a constant barrage of psychological manipulation, designed to strip them of their identity and their will to resist. They were denied their names, their languages, their cultures. Forced to adopt the customs of their oppressors, they were made to feel like strangers in their own land, their own history and heritage systematically erased. The plantation owners understood that true control came not just from physical dominance, but from mental subjugation. By severing the enslaved population from their roots, they sought to create a workforce that was docile, obedient, and utterly dependent on their masters. This psychological warfare was a constant presence, a heavy weight pressing down on their souls. It was a form of torture that left no visible scars, but its impact was no less devastating, leaving deep emotional wounds that would take generations to heal. Despite the horrors we endured, we never truly accepted our fate. The desire for freedom, a flame that burned bright in our hearts, could not be extinguished by the whip or the chains. Throughout the history of Jamaican plantations, acts of resistance, both large and small, served as a testament to our indomitable spirit. There were open rebellions where they rose up in arms, their desperation fueled by the belief that death was preferable to a life in chains. These uprisings, though often brutally suppressed, sent shockwaves through the island, reminding the plantation owners of the precarious nature of their power. There were daring escapes, where individuals and families risked everything to flee into the dense forests, seeking refuge in the mountainous interior, where they formed independent communities known as Maroon settlements. The Maroons, a symbol of resistance and resilience, waged guerrilla warfare against the colonial authorities, their courage and inspiration to those still trapped in bondage. And there were countless acts of everyday resistance, small but significant blows against the system that sought to dehumanize us. We feigned illness, sabotaged equipment, and slowed their work pace, chipping away at the foundations of the plantation economy. The Jamaican plantation system, though abolished in 1834, left an indelible mark on the island's landscape and its people. The grand plantation houses, once symbols of wealth and power, now stand as crumbling ruins, haunted by the ghosts of their past. The sugar-cane fields, once worked by the sweat and blood of enslaved Africans, now whisper tales of sorrow and resilience. The legacy of slavery is a complex and multifaceted one. It is a legacy of pain and injustice, of families torn apart and cultures destroyed. But it is also a legacy of strength and resilience, of a people who refused to be broken, who fought for their freedom and ultimately triumphed over adversity. The story of Jamaican plantations is a reminder of the dark side of human nature, of the capacity for greed and cruelty that exists within us all. But it is also a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, to the unwavering belief in freedom and the determination to overcome even the most brutal of circumstances. The once grand estate, now a skeleton of its former glory, stands as a stark reminder of the darkness that once gripped this land. The sugarcane fields, once a symbol of both wealth and suffering, now sway gently in the breeze, their rustling leaves whispering tales of those who toiled and perished under the Caribbean sun. The descendants of those who were enslaved on these plantations have inherited not only the trauma of their ancestors, but also their strength, their dignity, and their unyielding thirst for freedom. They have transformed the narrative of pain and oppression into one of resilience and triumph, their voices rising in unison to challenge injustice wherever it may lurk. The scars on the land may remain, but they serve as a constant reminder of the past, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity. Please reflect on the historical narrative presented and engage in the discussions in the comment section about the impact of the past on the present.